Did you watch any of the All-Star game itself?
I never watched the game at all because
Yeah,
who gives a flying fuck?
What's up, and welcome to the Crude Oil Podcast, a weekly uncensored Edmonton Oilers podcast with your hosts, Sean and Greg. What's up, and welcome back to the Crude Oil Podcast. Ironically enough, it's the Matt Berlin episode. How did that work out for us?
I mean, you couldn't ask for it to work out any better.
I was sitting on that for like a week, and I was like, oh my God, 33 is actually next week. That's crazy.
I mean, and I think we should probably add some honorable mentions to some former Oilers here. The longest tenured person being Marty McSorley.
Oh, that's right. I was about to pull it up. I was like, I have a feeling there wasn't a lot of goaltenders in Edmonton that
We
wore
also
the
had Cam
33.
Talbot.
Oh, that's right.
So, but unfortunately for them, Matt Berlin kind of took the spotlight in these past couple weeks for Edmonton, and he was the news story for the entire night when they played Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, let's dive right into things. We're coming back ready. It kind of feels like Christmas Eve because you'll be listening on Christmas essentially because the Oilers play tomorrow night. Feels like the first game in it's been almost 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, I think it's been about a week and a half because we just didn't bother recording last week just because there was only 2 episodes. And then as Greg mentioned, there's been a huge gap because of the All-Star break. So yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah. Lots to dive into. So we'll jump back a couple weeks in time and just quickly go through the Oilers getting their win streak snapped by Columbus in OT. Kind of a no-show there, hey?
Yeah, that was a little disappointing. I don't know if I'd go as far to say no-show, but I would say that they A, got goalied, and B, really took their foot off the gas in the third period and kind of didn't give themselves a chance to really win the game.
Yeah, it really doesn't help when Korpisalo decides to be a Vezina winner, in that game either.
Well, he's been playing like shit all season, so it was pretty disappointing to see him put on his A game just to play against Edmonton. But I mean, yes, we lost the win streak, but we didn't lose the point streak, so that might be something important to carry forward. So we're on an 8-game point streak.
That's true. Those things matter, man. Can we just jump into the kind of the elephant in the room? Why are we booing Johnny Gaudreau? Like, we own him.
I think it's people just want anything to do when they're in the crowd, to be honest. They'll find anything to cheer about, anything to boo about, especially boo about. And that's why even if there's a good, fair call against Edmonton, if it's a penalty, they'll still say, fuck you, refs, because they just need to get their 2 cents in.
Yeah, maybe we just don't like sitting still because I know the weight. Okay, we've gotten 33 episodes into this podcast, and we have not even discussed this. What is your take on the wave?
My take on the wave is the only time that it should be done is if the team is winning and winning by a decent margin. So I would say 3 goals or more would be what I would consider a decent margin. So if it's a 1-goal game, I don't want to see people doing the wave. If it's a 2-goal game, maybe, but that's really pushing it. 3 goals or more, sure, go for it. I don't care. Especially if it's on like a Saturday matinee game where there's lots of kids there, especially go for it because kids love that shit.
Yeah, that's fair. I was gonna take the Hardo approach. I can't stand it. But I'm with you where there should be some judgment that goes into it. It's like I don't know. It always makes me think of how the Red Sox will be down 8-0 and they'll still play Sweet Caroline in the middle of the inning for no good reason. I'm with you. There has to be some sort of judgment call, but
well, I remember specifically there was a game I think that we were losing. Two goals down or something like that. And people started doing the wave. I'm just like, what the fuck is happening? And to be fair, when I'm at a game, I probably won't get too involved in the wave. Maybe I'll join for one. And then after that, I'm like, okay, that's enough. But I don't know. Some people love it. And I say to each their own to a degree. But you could say that about anything that people do at a hockey game. It's like the glass bangers. I fucking hate people who
Oh,
bang on the glass.
fuck
That drives me
me. Yeah.
insane.
Yeah. Especially when it ruins like your TV like presentation too. Like there's nothing more annoying than that.
Oh yeah, you're trying to like hear on the mics when there's something going on in the corner. All you hear is just like bang, 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 bang.
So true. So true. I don't know how we got off on that tangent, but just crowd antics. Apparently, we can't sit still. But the only thing that I was gonna bring up from this Columbus game is Derek Ryan. Like low key, I'm glad I picked him kind of as the unsung hero so far this season because like he put up his seventh there, and he's just quietly having a really good year.
Well, considering how little he has played this season, whether it's ice time or games in total, because he's been healthy scratched or something like that, I've been pretty impressed with the way that he's played, especially being our only right-handed center.
Mm. Yeah, that's a good point. That is a good point. Yeah, just wanted to point that out. So, in this perfectly planned segue, we're gonna move from one U of A hockey alum to a current member in Matt Berlin. He stole the show Saturday night. Hey,
Well, like I loved it. Everybody loved it. Like, did he steal the show? Not really, but at the same time, they gave him the opportunity of a lifetime.
yeah, I mean he gets one save. He gets to get some time in. The thing that I really liked that the Oilers did is covering the fact like I think McDavid before he even answered the question was like first off like we meant no disrespect to the Blackhawks. I thought it was very classy the way they did it.
Well, that's the real question that I'm curious about is like if you're in that situation and you're the Oilers, do
Mhm.
you run it by the Blackhawks to ask if it's okay? To be like, "Hey,
Just
like
leaning over the bench.
we know you're down 4 goals and like we want to give this guy like the opportunity of a lifetime. Can we do this or are you going to be fucking pissed?"
You know how shitty you guys are losing right now? Are you okay if we put our like e-bug in? Uh,
Well, like I think it doesn't really matter cuz I don't really give a fuck what Chicago thinks. But at the same time, if I was on the other side, I'd be like, "For fuck's sakes." Like
yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Especially that they only got one shot on goal on him and they didn't like do anything to beat him.
I mean, if the guy never plays a game in the NHL again, like he's got a 100 save percentage. Like how much better does it get than that?
I mean, he can join the short list of goalies who have that. And
God forbid,
Edmonton's
Chiarelli would have him to a contract at this point.
yeah, Edmonton's I guess lucky to a degree too that they were able to do that because I was reading that there was I can't remember, it was a few years ago, but I think it was Philadelphia. I really can't remember. But they tried to do the same thing. They tried to let their e-bug go in and play the end of the game. But
Mhm.
the difference was that in that game their starter got hurt and then their backup had to go in, so then they had to bring an e-bug down from the crowd during the game to sit on the bench.
Mm, yeah.
And at that point, you can't do that because they're not allowed to play three goalies in a game unless it's on an injury basis.
Oh, I don't even know if I knew that rule.
Yeah. So
Huh.
essentially, unless the like backup goalie also gets hurt, then you can't play that other goalie in the game.
Huh. That's new. I wonder too, like what enhancements they made because I think after the whole David Ayers situation, I think they rejigged the whole like e-bug rules and stuff. But I don't know. That's
Well,
it's a rarity to see, but I thought it was a very classy move. And I think the other thing that was really cool is to see all of the like thoughts from people around the NHL that are like jumping on the Oilers bandwagon now just because it was such a solid move.
I mean, it was really cool, and apparently, according to Woodcroft, it was McDavid's idea too, of all people. So,
Yeah.
like, that's even better to see that kind of thing out of like the captain of the team, who's like, I want to give this guy the opportunity of a lifetime, and he goes to the coach, who's like, hey, let's do it.
Yeah, that's the thing that I was gonna bring up this podcast. Like this little stretch that the Oilers are on. What are they? 7-0-1, 8-0-1. Um, but do you think that's kind of like this all stemmed from the players' meeting? Do you think they just basically like now we're going?
Well, I think they like during that meeting. I'm assuming it had a lot of swearing going on, a lot of yelling at each other, and then some accountability to be held for each other, especially like on, I'll say, like the defensive zone for everybody, to be like, we got to get our fucking shit together. We can't just coast our way into the playoffs like we're barely in a playoff spot as we speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it truly worked, and the team is playing better than they have all year, and I don't think they'll necessarily keep up this level of play for the entire season, but I don't expect them to completely fall apart now, because I think they've really found their bearings, and then hopefully this break that we've had doesn't completely throw away all the momentum that we've gained over the past 2 weeks.
Yeah. So the meeting, from my understanding, was on like the 10th or something after that LA game. And so far the Oilers are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 0 and 1. So not a bad little stretch you're on. Um, and I think it's really made a turn for them too in some of the teams that they beat. Like a lot of people are being like, "Oh, you beat up on the Ducks and you beat up on the Sharks. You also beat a really good Tampa team. You beat a really good Seattle team, and Vegas was no slouch either."
Well, like, and it's funny because, like, yes, we beat those teams that aren't as good, but if it was the other way around, if we lost to every team like we lost to Columbus, everybody would be shitting all over Edmonton. So it's like, you
Hmm.
beat them, you can't win. You lose to them, you can't win. So like, what, like, why are you going to listen to all these people bitching and complaining about that? Like, these are the games we have to win.
Yeah, exactly. I and the other thing I was going to point out just on this streak that we're on too, I think I've mentioned it before, and I know you have been harping on this, but out of all of those games, the Oilers have only given up a max of 3 goals in a game, including the game they lost.
I'd love to see it, honestly. Jack Campbell's
Yeah.
really come into his own into this later part of the season. He's found his game a little bit. I think he still has room for improvement as well, which isn't necessarily a bad
Mm.
thing. And I think Skinner's settling back in after having his child. So yeah, I think it's just everyone's just playing better, and I have been yelling at my TV slightly less than usual.
Yes. Yes, that's very true. Um, speaking of Skinner, again, he got to travel. This is still considered his rookie season, right?
Technically speaking, he is Calder eligible, yes.
Yes. Okay. So being a rookie, going to your first ever All-Star game, not a shabby way to start off your NHL career. But he joins Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid for the All-Star game. Um, Sean, honest question. This is a safe room. Nobody else is listening. How much of the All-Star game did you watch, or the
Uh,
whole weekend?
Literally, I tuned in for the start of the skills competition because I just so happened to be in the kitchen cooking.
Yeah.
And turn on the TV. Mitch Marner skates out in his stupid all white suit, takes the worst shot I've ever seen in my life on Roberto Luongo on a breakaway, and I turned off my TV.
Oh my God. Yeah. And did you watch any of the All-Star game itself?
No, I didn't watch a single second of it. I did watch replays
Yeah.
of like McDavid and the accuracy shooting and things like that, but I never watched the game at all because
Yeah.
who gives a flying fuck?
Yeah. I was cleaning the house when the skills comp was on, and I sat down to watch like McDavid stuff. But like in passing and looking, like such a dog shit effort from everybody. Some of the events were so stupid. Like the only thing that had like any kind of like creativity was that golf um thing they did. But I mean, when you combine that with the stupid surfboard shit in the dunk tank and the breakaway goals, like the whole skills comp can be summed up with Trevor Seagriss's snooze emoji.
Well, like when they're not trying, is it really a skills competition? I think the word skills and competition should be X'd out in that description.
Yeah, yeah, and then the games itself too were just like again complete waste of time. It was nice to see future Oiler Eric Carlson set up McDavid, so that I mean that was the highlight.
Get to see that chemistry start to blossom early.
Yeah, but I don't know. So I put the thing up on Twitter and I was trying to figure out, I was like, what would make the NHL All-Star game um like not miss television? And we had a guy responded with a hot dog eating contest. I would fucking tune in for that.
Dude, I would love to watch that. I could see some guys being absolute fucking monsters at that competition.
Yeah. And then our boy Brad, he said just make it mean something, like home ice in the Stanley Cup final. Yeah, like we alluded to that in the last podcast. Completely agree with that. Put something up for um something to make it worth something. Because like what the hell did Nick Suzuki win? Like Chipotle for a
Oh,
year?
that was the
And
funniest shit ever. He's like, there's not even a Chipotle in Montreal.
like what the fuck? Uh, I don't know. It's just such a dud of a weekend. I feel bad for guys like McDavid and Draisaitl who have to leave Turks and Caicos to go to those things.
Well, I think they at least enjoy it to a degree, just for the
Yeah.
fanfare and getting to hang out with other guys. Like it was cool to watch. I think it was the beginning of the game. It was McDavid and like McKinnon. We're just sitting there like fucking talking to each other and going back and forth. And it's kind of cool to see the guys communicating to
Yeah.
each other and actually being friendly with each other.
Yeah, yeah. I love that stuff too. The one thing that I felt bad as I saw some of the clips and stuff over the weekend, and there's one in particular where the three Oilers are walking down the tunnel, and like McDavid and Draisaitl are like half a step ahead of Stuart Skinner, and like McDavid and Draisaitl are just yucking it up between the two of them, and Skinner's kind of like left out of the group, like you're back in high school.
Well, I think those two are a little bit tighter than anybody else who could have even went with them, regardless of who it was. So,
Yeah,
but
but
all in all,
yeah,
it's fucking boring. Like, I think there's nothing you can really do to make it interesting that would actually be possible. The only thing I could think of is if they were like, here, players, here's a huge fucking prize pool. Winner gets all this money. And that's the only way that you could avoid it. And even then, that just creates more issues with players getting injured and things like
mm,
that. And it's just not going to happen. And I don't think they're going to
yeah.
scrap it because for some reason, I think it makes money. So they're going to keep doing it.
Speaking of making money, I'm willing to bet all of mine that they're gonna do something at like the Rogers Center in Toronto next year. Like they're gonna have some cheap gimmick in the baseball stadium.
Well, it's going to be ridiculous. They're going to have like a home run derby or something like that for all the players.
Yeah, yeah, no kidding. But the only other thing I wanted to touch on uh, is we're recording this on Monday. Dylan Holloway still might be hungover.
I saw a lot of videos and stuff that were posted around of him doing quite a few shotguns and chugging beers and just pretty much doing what I did when I was his age.
Yeah, yeah. I keep forgetting the kid's like what, 21? Like, of course that's what we did when we had vacations and time off.
Yeah, there was a lot of pictures of him, McLeod, and Bouchard.
Well, apparently Jack Campbell was down there too, Tyson Berry. I don't know where they went, but there's a whole group of them that went.
Well, I saw all those pictures of those guys like down there, but I always saw those three together, probably from their time playing on Bakersfield.
Oh, good
Well,
point.
I guess
Yeah.
Holloway didn't play on Bakersfield really, but still, Holloway's just Mr. Hollywood, so everybody loves him apparently.
Big glue guy. Big glue guy. So I think the only thing to take out of this All-Star break heading forward is where we're sitting. Kind of the rumors like you were mentioning before, like we kind of expected something to have gone down over the past week.
Well, I did expect something to happen with Puljujärvi, just because I think I did hear a few like whispers regarding that. Like specifically, there was something about Frank Saravalli talking about them having to make room for Yamamoto coming back, which could include them moving on from Puljujärvi, which is the most likely factor or the most likely outcome.
Yeah.
And then that there was teams like St. Louis and the Lightning and whoever the fuck is this hashtag. What the fuck does that mean? Time to hunt. Who is hashtag time to hunt?
Is
Oh, it's
that the Panthers?
it is the Panthers. What a terrible fucking hashtag. Jesus.
Maybe use their actual team name so they can get people in that fucking arena.
Maybe. But yeah, essentially there's rumors that Puljujärvi might be traded to one of those teams. Like you look at the Blues and you wonder if maybe there might be something including Ryan O'Reilly like we had talked about last week. Whether or not that could work salary wise, I'm not sure. But with
Mhm.
Florida, I've heard things about Anthony Duclair coming back, and then with the Lightning, who fucking knows? I don't even know what they have left on that team that they can trade because they've traded everything away.
Yeah, I was gonna ask what do you do to make that one work, but I don't know. We'll see what happens. Hopefully something gets done here in the next little bit. Obviously, we have the Bo Horvat deal, which kind of shook the waves. I I had to take like I don't even know who won that trade, but it was very large. I did not see Anthony Beauvillier going back the other way.
I think one thing that a lot of people aren't aware of is that Beauvillier has had a bit of a struggle this season. He hasn't been
Mhm.
as good as he has been in the past. So it's less of a big deal as it was previously. Like his career high in goals was 21, and that was 5 years ago. And then he
Yeah,
had 15 goals in 47
good
games a
point.
couple years ago, but since then he hasn't really done much.
Mhm.
And then Atu Ratti, I know he was highly touted a long time ago. I remember at one point he was listed as like the number one prospect in the 2021 draft, but then he just completely fell apart in his draft year and he ended up falling to the second round and the Islanders got
Mhm.
him. So he has a lot of upside if he can find his game. And then obviously there's a first round draft pick, but it's top 12 protected. So
I was gonna say,
even if they're out of like the sweepstakes for Bedard, it's not going to matter. Vancouver's not going to get him because it's going to be protected.
yeah, yeah. I
So
well,
I
and
would say based off of that, especially with the fact that they extended him, I would say the Islanders probably won that trade. But with that being said, that extension is a little absurd in my opinion.
yeah, eight was it 8 years, $68 million?
Yeah, eight
Like,
years, 68 million, so 8.5 a season, and that's 100% real salary. It's 8.5 every single year for that entire contract.
yeah, that's a little steep for me. For Bo Horvat, that's a
I
little
think
steep.
this season, Bo Horvat, I think he might be worth it. But outside of this season, he has not proven to be an 8.5 million player. When you look at guys like Nuge and guys like Hyman, who are making just over 5 million compared to that contract, like Horvat should be making like maybe like 6.5 at most.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I've always wondered like what goes into like players just signing their life away as soon as they get traded. Like, how do you know you're gonna want to stay there for 8 years?
Yeah, you look at like the Huberdeau contract, for example, or the Kachuk contract when he signed in Florida. And like to be fair, maybe signing in Florida is a little bit easier for a guy like Kachuk, but see Huberdeau come to Calgary and sign an 8 year deal, and then you see how much he's been struggling there to do anything. So
Oh,
it's really
yeah.
questionable why they decide to do that. But then again, if you're Bo Horvat and like, yeah, you have to live on like live in New York, that's pretty cool. You're getting
Hmm.
paid $8.5 million a year, which I still think both years and like actual money that is way above his actual worth right now. So I would probably
Yep.
jump at that contract too because he's guaranteed $68 million now. Like you can't say no to that.
Yep. Yep. I don't blame him there. uh, I guess on the topic of big trades, some rumors starting to really float around this Chikrin stuff. The Oilers' interest in this guy is very much like that couple. Speaking of high school, that like breaks up every 2 weeks. Like they're talking, but they're not talking, but they're talking, but they're not talking.
Oh, it's never fucking ending. It's just like Chitrin, and then the next week you hear, oh, there's not like it's not happening. They haven't even been talking. Then the next week they're like, Oilers are the front runners for Jacob Chitrin. Then the next week they're like, oh, but they probably can't afford it, so they're out. It's just never ending.
I
But
wonder if like Puljujärvi would be included in that package deal. Like if they move Puljujärvi, because the timeline's running out for them to move him, and if he's going to be part of that package that goes for Chikrin, like do they just eventually trade Puljujärvi and then just give up on Chikrin, or I don't know.
like, are you saying that they trade Puljujärvi to somebody else? Did they just give up on the Chitrin trade at that point? If that was even in the
Yeah,
works in
like
the first place?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
I would say like
I
I wouldn't give up on it per se. Like let's say for example they trade Puljujärvi to Florida for Anthony Duclair 1-for-1. So that's pretty much a lateral move in terms of who's playing in the lineup. So
mhm.
when you look at a Chitrin trade, then you're looking at giving up high draft picks. You're looking at giving up big prospects like a Lavoie or a Savoy or like one of maybe like a Nima Leinen or a Kesselring or something like that to replace Chitrin being a defenseman over there. So it just goes away from being roster players to probably switching out for prospects and picks, but then you have to make the salary work. So then you're looking at like, are we going to get rid of Cody Ceci? Are we going to get rid of who else has bad contract? Fogel, maybe Derek
Yeah,
Ryan. Like I know you were hyping him up, but like his contract's a little rich for my
it's up
blood.
there.
But like
Yeah,
those are really the players that I've been hearing would potentially be on the chopping block, but I don't know. It makes it difficult. So any trade that they make to fix their defense, I would like to see Puljujarvi involved because I don't think they have the salary assets to get rid of to bring in a defenseman otherwise.
yeah, that's yeah. Can't argue that at all. I don't know what they'll wind up doing. Is it unrealistic to maybe throw the option of like flirting with a Yamamoto move?
Well, if you're any team looking at Yamamoto, why would you trade for him?
I know, he can't stay in the lineup.
Well, his
Like,
injury history has been pretty bad the past couple years. Like he hasn't done much of anything when he has been in the lineup this season. Like people shit on Puljujarvi all the time, but Yamamoto, when he's been healthy and playing, he's been pretty dog shit too, to be fair. So
yeah,
like I don't know. I wouldn't look at him. I don't think he has the upside that Puljujarvi does in terms of size. So at the end of the day, I think Edmonton would be okay with trading him away, but I think it would
yeah,
be difficult to get anything of value for him.
yeah. I was curious if he would spark a little bit more trade value than a Puljujärvi would, but I don't know.
If he was
Now
healthy,
that
I
I
would
think
say
about it,
yes, but if not, I don't think he will.
hmm yeah, uh, yeah. I think that tackles everything I had for the Chikrin stuff. We'll wait and see if anything comes to fruition here. Obviously, we've got the trade deadline in a few weeks, but um, yeah, let's talk mullets, Sean.
Yes, mullets. For anyone who is not aware, there was a fun little bet between Holloway and McDavid regarding a 6-game win streak, which was achieved. So now McDavid is growing back the mullet for the rest of the season.
I uh I heard him get asked how long he's going to keep it for, and he said he's gotten a lot of mixed reviews, but as long as things are good at home, he said he's fine with it. So who knows how long he's going to be rocking this thing.
I mean, I would hope that it's part of Edmonton's new winning attitude that they have. It's like, as long as the mullet remains, we're going to keep winning.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I love it. I love when teams like have that like crazy thing, whether it's like the shaved heads or you know everyone grows beards or stuff. It's always cool.
It's a little junior for have the whole team doing it, but I would love to see the whole team just like everybody grow mullets, especially
Yeah.
some of those older balding guys try to do it. Be like me with a mullet. It just wouldn't be a pretty sight.
Campbell's running out of time. He's got a he had way less time than I thought he had.
That's true.
Uh, but yeah, while the NHL took a little bit break, obviously the AHL stuff still going on, eh?
Yeah, and Bakersfield's been playing pretty well recently, and especially Raphael Lavoie. He's been really heating it up and starting to settle into Bakersfield, scoring 10 goals and 10 assists in his last 18 games.
It's kind of nice to see because like he's the one guy of those like group of youngsters like coming up that he never seemed to take off like I thought they were going or thought they expected him to.
Well, he's
But
supposed to be
um,
just a pure sniper, right? And
right,
to be fair, down in Bakersfield this year, they don't have a lot going for them with losing Woodcroft and Manson has been pretty hard on the team. You lose Skinner. You lose Desharnais now. You lost Niemelainen for the beginning of the season. You lost Holloway. You lost McLeod. Like, they lost some of their
yeah,
best players, and that kind of moves everybody up in the lineup and makes it a lot harder down there. But it does give guys like Lavoie a lot of opportunity to show what they can bring to the team.
yep, that's a good point. I it it allows them to definitely get the ice time they weren't getting before. I'm with you there.
Well, it also increases the trade value too. Not that I want to trade
Ooh,
Lavoie, but it
yeah, that's
would
a good point.
help attract more teams with good defensemen that we might want to trade for. You look at Chychrun, you look at Gavrikov, any of those guys. Like maybe a team
Yeah.
is more interested in trading with Edmonton if Raphael Lavoie is involved.
Well, and that's the thing that I keep looking down the road. Like, if we're looking 2, 3 years down the road, how are you going to get guys like Savoy, Lavoie? you know, Like, how do you get them in the lineup to have a prominent role with the roster that the Oilers currently have? Like, like log jammed with McDavid, Draisaitl, Kane, Hyman, Nugent Hopkins. Like, there's half the forward group.
Well, a lot of these guys that like you named are centers. So let's just look at the wingers, right? So we have Kane and Hyman,
Well,
both on pretty long-term contracts. They're not going to go anywhere anytime soon. You have what? Let's just say Nuge, long-term contract. You have Yamamoto, shorter term, but pretty settled into that top 9. You have Holloway, who's probably not going anywhere. You have Fogel, maybe might move on. That might open up a slot. Puljujarvi might open up a slot. So
mhm.
definitely, I wouldn't say that there's a top 6 slot available for any of these guys, but I wouldn't go as far to say that there's nothing in the top 9 at least. And that's not to say
Yeah,
that these guys can't play defensively either and potentially play on the bottom forward group.
Yeah, I think that's more so what I was leaning to is like they'll have to change their game. Just like if you're looking at a Lavoie to jump in, like the sniping. I know he played wing in junior, but I think he's more of in a center role now. But uh, yeah, I to fit in the top 9, I think they definitely have to change their game.
He could
Or-
play a more physical role, to be fair. He is 6'4". So you could
He's
look at like,
big, but he's lanky.
well, yeah, you could look at the way like Puljujarvi has changed his game a little bit, where he plays more physical. Like Puljujarvi leads the team in hits.
I
So,
know
like,
that's
I'm
wild,
not
eh?
saying that Lavoie has that in his game, but maybe that's something that he could look to fit better into the lineup. Or you look at the way Tyler Benson had changed his game to try and get onto the actual team, where he's focused more on killing penalties and playing physical and being more of an energy guy than being the
Hmm.
offensive guy that he was in juniors.
Yep, agreed. Taking a look at the schedule. This is something I want to touch on because I don't know if you've looked at the next few weekends, but the Oilers are getting fucked up the ass with their schedule because there's what 2 10:30 games this next coming weekend. There's another 10:30 game in 2 weeks after that. There's I think a 2 o'clock game. Like it's
Yeah, in
horrific this
2
month.
weeks we have a 1 p.m. game, 3 10:30 games. Honestly, I'm not
Unreal.
against a 10:30 game.
Really?
Like if I were to have a game, I'd rather it be at like 7 p.m. or especially on a weekend super early in the morning. So then I can get the game, unless my plans are revolving around the game, you get the game like quote unquote out of the way and then spend the rest of your weekend doing something. Versus if it's at like 2 p.m., smack dab in the middle of the day,
Yes.
and you're like, okay, well now I can't go anywhere because I want to watch the hockey game. And it's kind of
Yeah,
fucking with my day.
yeah, I think that's that's fair. I'd rather have a game at 10:30 in the morning than 2 o'clock in the afternoon for sure.
Well, I don't want it to be commonplace either. Like having two back-to-back 10:30 games is a little fucking ridiculous this weekend.
Yeah. Do you remember like growing up how special it was to have like 3 back-to-back games on Hockey Night in Canada, on Hockey Day in Canada or whatever? It happened like once a year.
Oh, it was pretty
And now it's
cool where they'd have like 10:30 game, 2 p.m. game, 5 o'clock game, 8 p.m. game.
yeah, and now it's every weekend.
Oh, that like I think they try too hard to squeeze everything in, honestly,
Yeah.
and it fucks us over because we get so many 8 p.m. games or 8:30 games that are just like staying up until the crack of dawn to watch those games. Like if you had to work on a
Mhm.
Sunday morning or something like that, you're fucked.
Yeah. Yeah. But speaking of upcoming games, Detroit, Philly, Ottawa, Montreal, these are the teams you got to beat.
I mean,
The
this is definitely a stretch of 4 games, even 5 games because we play Detroit as the 5th game in the series. These are all games that if we do not win, I will be disappointed.
Yeah. Yes. I I seem to remember was last year when they came out of that. I'm trying to think back. Wasn't Dave Tippett fired like right after the All Star game?
It was in and around now. I can't remember exactly when it was. Let
Because
me look up
something
the date.
reminds me. Because something reminds me that we returned back from the All Star break to play two absolute dog shit hockey games, and I remember that feeling like the low point last year.
So Dave
But
Tippett was fired on February 11th last year. So the
okay,
anniversary
yeah,
is in 5 days. I think potentially what had happened is I think they might have came back and played like one game after the All-Star game and we lost and then they fired him.
yeah, okay. Because I just remember the Oilers bouncing back from the All Star game last year extremely poorly.
Yeah, I don't think it was great. Edmonton lost home games to Vegas and Chicago after the All-Star break, being outscored 8-1 in those two games.
Yeah, yeah,
And then
yeah.
they let
So
Tippett go.
so we will see what happens with Detroit, Philly, Ottawa, Montreal.
I mean, like I said, we got to win these games because the standings are really close right now. Like
I
Edmonton's
know.
sitting in the first wild card spot with, I got to zoom in. Jesus, I'm so blind. 60 points in their 50 games played. They're sitting 2 points back of Vegas with one game in hand. They're sitting three
Mhm.
points back of LA with 3 games in hand, and 3 points back of Seattle, who has a game in hand on Edmonton.
And still 6 points behind first spot in the West, which I called at the start of the year. So we're not entirely out with a game in hand, no less.
Yeah, like I think it's more than reasonable to believe that Edmonton could win not only the division but the West in general. I think people were hesitant to say that at the beginning of the year, specifically the West, because
Mm,
Colorado had the expectation to just be Colorado and be the juggernauts and be unstoppable. But because of all their injuries, they're not doing so hot. So I think it's more than reasonable to assume that Edmonton could win the entire conference.
yeah, like and specifically looking at the Pacific Division, like Vegas has got a big injury problem. Uh LA's goaltending situation is like questionable at best. And every time we play Seattle, we seem to fucking thump them. So I mean, I guess we don't play them for the rest of the year, so that's kind of a moot point. But like, it's the Pacific. I I like where we're at right now.
Well, to be fair, if the playoffs started today, we would play Seattle
Yeah,
based off of the
yeah,
way these standings are right now. So, like, I think in a series, I would feel confident against Seattle. I'd feel confident against LA. I'd feel okay against Vegas, depending on how healthy they are. And some of those other teams in the Central, I'm a little bit more hesitant about. Minnesota, I'd feel okay playing. Winnipeg, I'm actually scared to play against because Hellebuck is Hellebuck
yep,
and he can just win a series by himself, as we've seen in the past. And then Dallas has a similar position where they have a great player in like Robertson, and then they have Ottinger, who everybody saw last year can just turn it on whenever.
yeah. I honestly, looking at the entire West Division this year, the only teams that really scare me is Dallas, because they're having a hell of a year. But for some reason, Colorado still scares me a little bit.
Well, it's because a healthy Colorado team is essentially the team that won last year, minus a second line center.
Yeah, yeah,
So if they can find a way to get healthy and play like they did last year, which I think is possible, I could see them making a big trade at the trade deadline here. I was expecting them to honestly be a front runner for Horvat to play their
yeah.
second line center role. I don't know how they can make it fit salary wise, but if they can fill that gap and get healthy, then I think they would be the easy Stanley Cup favorites in the West.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, last question. Do you think our friends down south have a playoff this year?
Do I think Calgary can make the playoffs? I'm
They're
gonna.
they're at 60% right now, just for your
I would like to say no. Like it's hard to say. Like they don't have a chance because I think that
Mhm.
depends more on the collapse of another team at this point. Unless they can find a way to get their shit together. Like Jonathan Huberdeau, like we mentioned, needs to get his shit together. pretty much anybody not named Kadri and their defense needs to get their shit together over there. I know for a fact I had Mangiapane in my fantasy league, and I fucking hated having him on the team because he was garbage. He did nothing for me. So, like,
Yeah,
their forwards need to figure it out, but I don't know if they'll figure it out under Sutter.
I don't think so either. I don't think he's the right guy, especially like he made a lot of sense for guys like Matt Kachuk and stuff, but I think they've just gotten more of a soft mentality. I don't know if his coaching style works.
Well,
I don't know.
outside of one of their bottom lines, whichever line decides to have Lucic on it that night, um, like they just don't really have the players that play the Sutter style. Like Huberto's not going to go out there and be throwing huge hits or like playing well defensively. That's the opposite of his game. And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think he can
So
play that way for some reason. Goudreau apparently could play under that system, but for some reason Huberto can't.
Calgary, here's a free idea. How about you take Huberto, you swap him over to Vancouver for JT Miller, and there you get two hardos with him and Blake Coleman playing together.
If there's one thing I would know is that Vancouver, I think, would take that trade 10 times out of 10.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Anything to get rid of JT Miller.
Oh yeah. Well, I guess that pretty much takes care of it. I didn't think we'd be able to even talk this long after not talking for 2 weeks and no Oilers games in sight. But here we are, almost 45, 50 minutes into this thing.
Hey, if you can't sit here and bullshit for an hour almost, like about having like 5 news topics to talk about, then how can you possibly do a podcast?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But it'll be nice to get back into the routine. We'll chat with you after the next 4 games this week. Let's hope they're all W's.